Hello and welcome to Odysseys. I am JT Northrope, as always, and joining me are Stripy Shirt McGee, Marshall Maywald, and
Hello.
Stole My Look Beanie Boy Shane Spicer. I just have to say, this is a discussion the three of us have had off air. I just have to say how left out I feel that my name doesn't have any alliteration to it. And every time I introduce the three of us, I feel that pain all over again.
Well, it's up to
Welcome.
you. Do you want to start going by NT Northrop or JT Jorthrop? Those are your choices.
Yeah, I'll have to figure that one out. But welcome to the channel. A little while ago, we did a fun video, but we took historical figures and we kind of discussed how you would play them in a D&D setting. So we talked about Dmitry Mendeleev, father of the periodic table. We talked about King David from Bible, and we talked about Rasputin, the mad monk from Russian history. And that video did pretty well, and we got some people saying that they would be interested to see some more of this. So we're doing it again. We're talking about even more historical figures, and in Marshall's case, an anime character that we would have fun translating into D&D characters. I want to be clear, we're like really like fantasying up these guys. I'm not saying that if you dropped Mendeleev into a D&D world, he would fit in as a wizard, but like how we would translate the kind of tropes of their real life into D&D tropes.
Speaking of, you mentioned our previous version of this video. First of all, you should check it out. You don't have to watch that before this one, but you should check that out when you're done here. But you should definitely leave comments on this video telling us what you want us to talk about, because my choice today was based off a comment from the last video. So we do read those, and if you're lucky or unlucky, depending on how you see it, I might choose your person.
We would totally do a part 3 of this, or an idea that I've mentioned in the last one, doing mythological figures as D&D characters. I think that would be fun. But yeah, please engage with us. Maybe there's an obscure figure that we don't know about that you want us to cover. But yeah, Marshall, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll kick us off and we're going right into it. They both kind of already make the joke that it's just a One Piece reference, but I'm going into straight up Blackbeard. Here he
Unfortunately,
is.
our loving community, I have not had time to make the days since One Piece reference counter yet. That is coming, but just know that it is 0 again.
Know that we know.
Well, this is the actual Blackbeard, but not the real picture of him. This is the movie from Pirates of the Caribbean with good old Jack Sparrow and Blackbeard in the background. So Blackbeard, otherwise his real name, Edward Teach or Edward That, he is believed to have been born around like 1680 in Bristol, England. But there's not too much known about like his like beginning life. But he was suspected to have been a privateer on some ships when he was younger in like the early 1700s, and he was legally attacking enemy ships under the British flag, but eventually became more prominent due to his maritime and combat skills, eventually getting to the point of joining the crew of Benjamin Hornigold in the Caribbean of 1716. But he became more well known during that and eventually took over a French slave ship, which he renamed the Queen Anne's Revenge, and he equipped it with 40 guns, and it became one of the most formidable ships in history, and it was his flagship. The biggest thing for Blackbeard is his fearsome appearance. He had these braids that he always braided his beard, and he had some like wicks at the end, and he lit those on fire when he went into combat. So he always had like these smoke plumes coming from underneath him, making him look demonic while he's just going into someone's ship and raiding them, and that led to his very fearsome reputation, being known for brutality, his psychological warfare, and just ruthlessness, and it was spread across the Caribbean and everywhere else that he was known for. But an interesting fact about him that we don't know if he actually killed anyone, because there's not actually any historical evidence that he has killed someone, and which is pretty interesting. And I like the idea that if he was just very, he spread a lot of rumors, made it to where his reputation and appearance just made him look evil, demonic, and just threatening, everyone just gave up and was like, "Okay, no, we're done. We're not fighting." And then they laid down their arms, and he took everything because a pirate. But eventually, near the end, his life, he got outnumbered and was heavily wounded. But after he was still shot 5 times, he still kept fighting. He always somehow managed to survive and kept coming back. But after he got shot 5 times, he continued fighting and wounded some other people. But then he got slashed with swords about, they said, 20 plus times, and then he succumbed to his injuries and died. Blackbeard, his braids with the smoked and wicks on the end of his braids, so just smoke coming off of it, making him look demonic. And obviously, I had to put the Blackbeard from One Piece in here, so Days
Counter
Without
drop
referencing
0.
is zero again. I really wish that Oda had the wicks on Blackbeard, but he didn't. But that's okay.
I was gonna
Go
say,
ahead.
Marshall, when you were talking about that aspect of him, like the real like terror aspect, I've seen most of One Piece at this point. I haven't seen all of it, and I haven't
Mhm.
even tried to read it. I wish Oda would have done something like that because that would make him look so much cooler. I've always felt like Blackbeard is intentionally a very like bad looking character. Like he's supposed to look the way he does, but
Yeah,
I feel like that would make him so much more interesting.
I agree. This is better, I think, picture of Blackbeard, all like all the chips in his beard and the sparks coming off of his
Yeah,
beard. It
the
looks
the real
awesome.
man had ships woven into his beard, full ships.
Normal
I've
shit, just gigantic ships.
I've shaved recently, but like I used to have a thicker beard. So Shane and I
Oh,
can both attest that like sometimes you just shove a ship in your beard.
Yeah, I mean,
this is
things get
what
lost in there
happens.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the D&D character aspect of Blackbeard, I was leaning into half orc tiefling for his race, tiefling as in like the other half part of the orc, but for the demonic side. But half orc because the relentless endurance, he was always known to be able to handle battle wounds in the midst of combat, but surviving way too much and just continuing to push forward. The main part of his class was I wanted to be rogue and it to be the mastermind. And the idea of that is because of how he was able to be so effective in maritime combat. And he was just very smart in how he handled combat. Then the next one was fighter for battle master for more control over the battlefield. And then the last bit would be Bard. No matter what, 3 levels in Bard, Whispers Bard to just add more to like the rumors that he basically spread about himself and reputation that he just started to build up. The main breakdown 12 or 13 levels in Rogue. I really want the 13 levels in Rogue so he got the misdirection ability so he can mess with somebody and like when he gets attacked he can bounce that off of himself onto one of his other enemies and then 5 levels in Fighter because multi-attack is great and then 3 levels in Whispers Bard always because you need to be able to get 3 levels to become a Whispers Bard and the 4 or 5 levels in the fighter, I would prefer 5, but I might have to go for 4 so I can still get full breakdown of all the levels that I want. But it was difficult choice. There's other options. This is how I broke it down. I'm curious about other people's opinions over the class breakdown for Blackbeard. What are y'all's two thoughts?
I mean, he's a pirate, so 20 levels of swashbuckler rogue and you're done.
Yeah.
That's too
I
easy.
I actually have a thought on the race
Okay.
That's
because
racist.
yeah, well, longtime viewers of this channel might know that we don't like have a vendetta or anything, but we're not super impressed by the aquatic races. But if you're playing Blackbeard and you're in a campaign where like I feel like if you're playing Blackbeard, you kind of necessitate that the campaign is very ocean focused and seafaring.
Hmm.
And in that kind of setting, an aquatic race would do really well. So while I respect your choice here and I absolutely think it works, just as an alternate option, if you wanted to play Blackbeard as a Triton or a Sea Elf, something like that. I
He might
feel
lose a
like
little bit of the intimidation if he's a Lakotha, though.
I Goblin Shark Lakotha, all I'm saying. Whenever
Okay.
whoever's editing this will have to put up an image of a goblin shark.
Okay. I almost went with variant human too, so I could get a feat, but an extra feat, but
Well,
didn't
he,
want to
he
do that.
was actually a human, so that would be
What?
pretty fitting.
He was actually human? Shocking.
Have-
Despite the rumors that apparently he may have said. Yeah, he was actually human.
Have we DNA tested his remains?
I don't think we have.
Do we have DNA testing for the mythological races that are not human?
No, but we can at least say definitively whether or not he's human.
True.
If he's not,
Alright.
we can't say what he is, but
I like this. But I don't think we've DNA tested his remains, so who knows? Who knows
so
what he is?
get
Could
on
be a
it,
goblin shark Wakata.
scientists.
Well, that's
Do we even
Blackbeard?
know where his remains are? I somewhat doubt it.
Probably not. They're probably in the ocean.
Yeah,
with
they've
Davy
probably
Jones.
decomposed.
So Blackbeard's last battle was against Lieutenant Robert Maynard, and in this battle, Blackbeard was killed, shot 5 times, cut 20 times. But Maynard did specifically examine Teach's body to make sure that he was dead, and that's how he found all of those injuries. The corpse was thrown into the ocean, but his head was suspended from Maynard's ship. So I think at this point it's all sunk underwater, but there was a short period of time. If anyone has a time machine, this is what you need to use it for. You could go back, grab his head, get some hair from it, and DNA test it.
I think you
No.
could grab some hair from him when he was alive too. If you're assuming a time machine, then why do you need him to be dead? There's a
You
there's
could,
a much
but-
broader
you
period of
don't-
time which
so
you can
you
get
don't
a
have
DNA
to-
sample.
You don't have to fight him.
It just kind of adds to the mystique of, like, because we were specifically talking about how he died and what happened to his body. I guess you could do it whenever, but that's a fun little fact about. There was a few years where his head was on a pike at the entrance of Chesapeake Bay.
Few
So,
years.
A
The thing
few
had to have
years.
smelled so bad.
I mean, like, at a certain point, it's just a skull, right? It's not a head anymore.
That's true.
Yeah. He had a bounty specifically put on him by the governor of Virginia, too.
That phrasing implies that there is a bounty that can be unspecifically put on someone's head.
Oh. Who knows? Well,
Yeah, we have this bounty out on Blackbeard, but it's not him specifically. I mean, it is because that's
If
what a
we-
bounty is, but it's not specifically Blackbeard.
Hey, there was a picture of Usopp right behind Luffy for his
Seconds
bounty
without a
hunters.
One
So
Piece
there was-
count.
There was a guy.
I was
there's
thinking more
bounty
like
for that.
I was thinking more like if a crime has happened but you don't know who did it, you could offer money for, like, information about that. It's not necessarily a bounty, but it's something.
Yeah, but it's
Okay.
not a bounty.
Well, if that's enough of Blackbeard, who's next?
That would be
I
me.
believe Shane is.
So I'm sure I'm going to get all the ire that I have dished out. I look forward to it. I've chosen Theodore Roosevelt. I meant to get like a screenshot of the comment I got this from and put it up there, but I forgot to. So if our editor is feeling, generous, you might be seeing it right now, over here. I mean, the basic thing, the thing that Theodore Roosevelt is most famous for, being an epic rap battle against Winston Churchill. That is all I know about him. I just watched that video. That's all the research I did. Thankfully, that's not entirely true, but it's pretty close.
I have the shout out.
Okay, let's do that.
It is from @TargetDreamer257, who he suggested a bunch of people, some of whom I almost took, but his first one was Teddy Roosevelt, who Shane took. So thank you, TargetDreamer257. Awesome suggestions.
Yep. Thank you for
Yep.
watching. Thank you for commenting. So
Yes.
actually, the thing that Theodore Roosevelt is most known for is being the 26th U.S. president. He was also actually the youngest person to become president when he took over after he was vice president and William McKinley was assassinated, and he became the youngest man to be president. Fun fact, the oldest man to become president is Joe Biden at 78. Fun. But Theodore Roosevelt did more just to be president. He wrote a few books, actually. He was He was known as an author before he became a politician. And he became a politician in New York. He did a few different things there, mostly cracked down on corruption. Apparently, at the time, the system was very corrupt, and he didn't let the policemen get away with being corrupt. And he worked on
At the time.
councils at the time. I mean, everything's secular, right? Yeah. So he became known for that, for being a very straight laced guy. A by the books guy. And then eventually he became vice president, became president. He was reelected after serving for 9 months to serve a full term. He didn't run the next cycle, but he did after that and lost. So he was known for being president. He was also known for his military service. He helped start the Rough Riders, which was a volunteer regiment. He was also known for his military service. He found the Rough Riders, which was a volunteer regiment that fought in the Spanish-American War. That is a picture of the Rough Riders. The guy with his head to the side a little bit, right next to the flag, right to the left of the flag, is Teddy Roosevelt, I believe, who did not like the name Teddy. He preferred Theodore, which makes sense. Personality-wise, he was a very macho man, a real man's man kind of guy. For a while, he owned a ranch in, I want to say Colorado. I don't exactly remember. And he worked closely with people who were, actual cowboys. And so, those are the other things he's known for. My choices for him, I spent so long trying to figure out what I wanted to make this man, because he was a real person. He was very, multifaceted. There's a lot to say for that. Something I also forgot to mention, besides corruption, he was also known for, not being corrupt, but fighting corruption. He was known politically for conservation, founded national parks. Not conservation, but I just remembered he also helped or started making the Panama Canal. So he did a lot of things. So an obvious, thought there, he's a military man known for conservation. Like, obviously he's a ranger, right? And that is like some of my main thought here. That's one of the two I have picked. I think that's a really good fit for him. I mean, he's not so much the druid type that's like one with nature. I mean, I would pick hunter for his ranger subclass because he was a big hunter. And I think that's the kind of man he was. He was the man who respected nature and respected the cycle of life and, enjoyed hunting. My other pick for him, I'm not a big fan of multi-classing personally, but I feel like a good mix for him would be ranger and monk, because something I didn't mention yet, when he was a child, he was very sickly. He was asthmatic. He was just very sickly. And he discovered once when he went on I believe it was a camping trip when he was young, that, the physical activity kind of helped him, feel more healthy and more robust. And that became a big part of his life, being this active man. And it did help him, be more healthy and be more vigorous. And so I think that monk is a very good choice for that, showing his self-discipline. Although, I mean, one could argue the same thing for fighter, which I think would be a good choice for him, but my pick is ultimately monk ranger. I do also want to say, I'll let JT explain this if you'll let me tee him up. I think the beef build works for him, because he's not very I wouldn't say he specified dex. I would think of this man as a strength man.
Yeah, the beef build is, so if you don't know, we stream a game that we're playing, a D&D game called Heartwood Heist, and in it I am playing local gym owner / just the strongest lion you've ever seen, Beef Ironpelt, and he is a bonk. He is a barbarian monk, and so, which takes kind of, the monks are very dexterity based, but you can use all of their abilities with strength attacks. And so Beef kind of takes all of the advantages of monk, but applies them to just hammering away at people with your fists.
Well, those are my, picks. I didn't want to do a level 20 breakdown, so I didn't. You can fight me in the comments, and people probably will. But what do you guys think?
I really like the monk and ranger aspect. That's a cool multi-class combo. I was trying to think of any spellcaster that would work for him, and I don't think anything would work for him.
Oh, sorry,
spellcasting.
I'm cutting you off, but I forgot to mention that if I was picking a subclass for monk, I would pick Open Hand, just to emphasize that his monkly aspect is the self-discipline and the training that he put himself through. And I think Open Hand is the most representative of that.
Yeah, I
What would
agree
be
with that.
your ranger subclass?
I said Hunter.
Oh, you said hunter. I missed that.
Yeah, Swarm Keeper.
The
All of the men in his in the Rough Riders are his little swarm.
Yes.
I
Oh,
love
That's
that.
very dehumanizing to all of his compatriots.
I don't like that for him, but I do like if we ever do folk like literature characters and one of us does Gulliver, the Lilliputians could be
Oh,
the swarm.
Also
I love that.
dehumanizing.
Very much so, but
I really do like the monk ranger though. That makes a lot of sense for who he was as a person. The presidency was very important for him, but the thing that stands out to me about Theodore Roosevelt was always the gruffness of him and just how physically strong he was. That's anytime I think about him, I just think about a very strong man, and that's what stands out to me. Monk and ranger, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
yeah.
Marshall keeps reminding me of things I meant to say, because him saying that he also there was an assassination attempt on him that is
Dang it,
at
I was
this
gonna
point
talk
well
about
known,
this.
and he got shot in the chest, inspected the wound, was like, I'm not bleeding that bad. I'm gonna finish my speech.
Yep.
I believe the bullet hit like the notes he had for his speech, like his transcript that he had in his breast pocket, that blunted the blow a little bit, which doesn't really
What
matter, but like that's a really cool aspect of the story.
One of my favorite fun facts about him was, as he was president, that he sent 16 battleships around the world, calling it the Great White Fleet, to show the impressive naval power of America, which I always liked that fact.
Fun fact, those were all retrofitted banana boats. That's not a joke. I feel like I was gonna tell that story about him getting shot during the speech to kind of tee into, because you mentioned the beef build, and I do feel like we would be remiss if we did not mention Barbarian here. I don't think
Yeah.
that a 1 to 20 Barbarian build would fit Teddy or Theodore. I'll be respectful, but he was one of the things that really differentiated him from other presidents at the time is that he was very active. Like he wasn't super into the politics side of things as much as he just wanted to get stuff done. And so like another famous nickname for him was Teddy Trustbuster, because he attacked like trusts that had formed in the oil industry, in the steel industry, in the railroad industry with real savagery. And of course, the story of him getting shot during his speech all kind of builds this character who does not act like a politician at all. And so I feel like, and also the fact that teddy bears were named after him, I feel like that's a fun link to bears that makes a barbarian build. Maybe just the 3 levels, like just do a little dip into barbarian.
That's your
But I think
that's your bonk dip.
yeah, I think that works. I don't think any of the level 6 abilities for a beast barbarian work for Teddy, or at least like none of them are really important for him. But if you're wanting to really fantasy up the build, the bear ability, resistance to all non-psychic damage, would really help.
Yeah, I also had that thought, and I do agree that it's a good dip for him. I feel like if you went full barbarian, I mean, you can role play a smart barbarian, but it's like the first thing I think of big, big strong dumb guy, and that felt unfair to say about Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah,
Now, I'm curious, do you think his charisma is more toward intimidation, persuasion, or performance?
I would
Or
argue
the
that
way he
he
let it out.
I would argue that he doesn't have a super strong or high charisma score. He just has proficiency in intimidation.
Yeah, I would say that it would be
Mhm.
the kind of thing the kind of player where I role play the intimidation as like unintentional, but just like by the
Mhm.
sheer force of like this was an imposing man, whether he was trying to be imposing or not.
Yeah.
Yep.
One
That's what I was
thing that
thinking.
I always look for when I'm building a character is like, what are some fun, just aspects of their personality that aren't like core traits, but things that can kind of flesh out the character. And especially when you're translating a historical figure into a D&D character, it's fun to find those. I think one of them for Theodore Roosevelt could be his hatred of the nickname Teddy, and it could become because hey, if you're playing a game of D&D and you say my character does not like to be called X, you have invited every character and NPC in that game to call him that name.
Yep.
And so I feel like it could be a really fun recurring joke in a game for people to keep calling him Teddy and he just refuses to answer to it. Or like maybe he eventually begrudgingly starts responding to it. It's a fun little way to flesh out the character a little bit that is historically accurate but still lends to role play.
I think we're winding down here, so I think it's time to hop over to JT's, who I hope someone watching hasn't heard of before, because I should.
Yes. So I prepared my part of the PowerPoint first, but I told Shane and Marshall I need to go last because I have the least well-known character or person. This is Bessie Stringfield. So she was born Betsy Beatrice White in, I want to say like early 1900s. 1911. I have her Wikipedia page pulled up in case I have to refer to it. And she eventually started going by the name Bessie. She took one of her husband's last names after she divorced him to get the name Bessie Stringfield.
Wait. After she
Yes.
divorced him, she took his name?
I think she kept the name after she divorced him.
Sorry. I really thought that was just some baller move of not taking it, and then they get divorced, and he's like, I think I want it now.
That would be such a girl boss move. So what Stringfield is famous for, as you can see, her epithet there, the motorcycle queen of Miami, she was one of the greatest motorcycle riders in American history, to the point that during World War II, she was asked to serve as a civilian courier for the army. And so she would drive cross country on her motorcycle to deliver, information and plans and memos and other stuff, because she was never served in the army. She was never involved in a combat, but people knew that like, if you give Bessie this message, it'll get where it needs to go and it'll get there faster than anyone else can get it there. I think she started riding when she was like a teenager and did like a carnival circuit for years, just doing tricks on her motorcycle. But a part of her character, I guess we can go on to the next slide, a part of her character that I feel like would be really interesting to explore in D&D, and also just like reflects who she was. She lived in Florida in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. American South in that period of time was not necessarily kind to people of color. So there's one story that I really like where basically as she was delivering these like top secret memos, like she couldn't say, hey, I'm working for the army, because that would like, she didn't have the clearance to share that information. So people would keep like, police officers would pull her over, be like, hey, Black people aren't allowed to ride motorcycles in this area. I'm cleaning up the language. They did not say Black people. They said much worse things. And so eventually she went to the police captain of Miami and said, I want you to meet me in this park at this time. And when we're done, you're going to give me free clearance to ride my motorcycle anywhere in Miami. And eventually it spread anywhere in all of Florida. She would not get pulled over. And so they did that. They met up in the park and she just did motorcycle tricks for like 2 hours, showed off, eventually got to the point where the captain was like, yeah, I guess we're going to give you clearance to ride wherever you want, which again, such a baller move. Like Bessie really was absolute girl boss. She was married 6 times, divorced all of them, and a fun, again, like something about, sorry, I moved my fan on accident. And again, something about her historical character that I think would be a really fun D&D thing is that she would always tell people that like she was born Bessie Stringfield, but obviously that was not her actual birth name. But I think it might be a fun little thing of like, she always shares fake names with people when she first meets them. And
No
so
wonder you
it could
like
even,
her,
yeah,
Randy.
something that I do a lot in restaurants. But I think that it would be fun. Like you could definitely as a DM build this moment where like 4 or 5 people that she's met meet her again and they're all calling her by different names. It's just a fun little thing that you could kind of slide into her character that is, again, historically accurate, but leads to some really fun dynamics. As for the build, so generally when you're building a motorcycle rider in D&D, I think a lot of people opt for it to just be a horse that's flavored as a motorcycle. I think that's the most common way of doing it. I went with something a little bit different. Shane, if you can go to the next slide for me. And I did these in pieces as to not spoil it. So go ahead and reveal my first one. I made her a halfling. Now, as far as I'm aware, Bessie Stringfield was a human. So human would absolutely be the most accurate race. I wanted her to be a short race or a small race because if we look at the next one, I think, well, actually, we'll start here. So first off, I want her to be a fighter because Cavalier gives some mobility options. If you don't know, Cavalier, it's not really like the horse rider fighter subclass. It's got more to it than that, but that is an aspect of it. And when you first get it, I think it gives you advantage on saves to not fall off your mount. It gives you a couple other things. So kind of building up already this rider personality. But the next piece of the puzzle, where you start going into Artificer as a battlesmith. Now, I've talked to other DMs I know to see if they would allow this. And everyone I've talked to has been on board, usually saying like case by case, but yes, I'd probably allow it. If you are a small creature, there's no reason you can't ride your steel defender. And that's why I wanted her to be a halfling. I wanted her to be small. I also think the halfling luck could kind of play into some of the tricks that she pulls off. So using the steel defender as the motorcycle is, to me, just a little bit more interesting than using a horse, because you've got this aspect of like, oh, she can be caring for the defender. She can kind of fix it in the middle of a fight by casting mending, which you can kind of flavor as she just like pulls out a screwdriver and tightens something while she's riding.
I do have to rules lawyer you. Mending takes a minute to cast, so you're probably not doing that in combat.
Fair enough.
I like the idea, but I had to ruin it for you.
There is
No.
also another rules lawyer thing where you can go into things about Icewind Dale or module with mending. Mending can be used in combat as an action to heal inanimate objects.
You've mentioned that before, but you didn't find the rule for me.
Oh, I can show it to you later.
But regardless, I think that having it in world be a creation is just a little more interesting than a horse. You can do it either way. Like if you want it to be a horse that you flavored as a motorcycle, that's fine too. But the other reason I wanted to go Artificer is because they get access to a lot of mobility spells that you can then cast on your defender just to make her an even better rider. So they get access, I think they have Long Strider, they have Jump, which would be interesting. Again, talk to your DM about this one because it's a little weird, but I think it works for the character. They get haste, and that's why I went full 9 levels in Artificer, so that you get access to the highest level spells, or you get access to 3rd level spells, not the highest. But you get access to stuff like haste, fireball, things that really make an Artificer build work. And then the last little bit, I think these 12 levels get you everything that you need. And so you can kind of take this in whatever direction you want afterwards. Marshall and I did 1 to 20 builds. Shane didn't. I really just did this because I think you get the character in 12 levels. But if you devote the remaining 8 levels to, specifically, I went with an Inquisitive Rogue, that gives you, it plays on kind of her intelligence and the way that she could kind of work with people. Like, she knew that showing her riding skill to that police captain was what she had to do. And she obviously was good enough with people to be pulled over constantly and never actually arrested. So Ear for Deceit, Eye for Detail are both inquisitive abilities that really aren't that good, but I think they, again, work for this character. But really, past those 3 levels in Fighter, 9 in Artificer, you can do whatever you want. Make her a Storm Sorcerer and let her ride on Thunderbolts. Like, do whatever you want with the character. This is just what I think is the most character accurate. So yeah, any thoughts?
I can't add to her her history at all because I have nothing to know about, but I really like Bessie Stringfield. That's really cool history and feats that she's done. The one thing I was thinking for her class, you could go almost, I think, full 20 levels of Bard, and her instrument is the motorcycle, and that's how she performs and does all of her techniques and things like that. So she casts magic through doing cool things on her motorcycle. I think that'd be really unique and interesting.
Bit of a stretch there. By bit,
It's
I mean
it's
that's a
I know.
huge stretch.
it's
I'm
such
not
a
saying don't
Marshall
do it. I'm just saying
idea,
that's a
but
huge stretch.
It's cool though,
that's such a Marshall suggestion, and I really like it.
right?
I am curious how one might go about role playing a 9th level bard spell as a woman on a motorcycle.
All I'm picturing is like, okay, first, if she's like in the middle in like a building, she can't bring in her motorcycle. She has a tech deck motorcycle. And she's doing little but ninth level spells or healing someone, she just revs her engine and exhaust hits you.
And
That's
heals
That's
them?
hmm. I don't know about that one, buddy.
or she pulls something out of the satchel and just yeets it at them. I think that'd be
Yeah,
really
one of those
funny
makes
and
more
unique.
sense than the other.
The ninth level spell that my mind went to, that's not even a bard spell, but
Well,
it's
magical
Meteor
secrets.
Swarm. That's true. But
Oh.
Meteor Swarm, I really like the idea of just a bunch of ethereal Bessie Stringfields riding in from the sky.
Jeez.
I was thinking of her like revving her engine and going into the sky and just like holding on the throttle and just like rocks raining from the sky while she's up there. That would also be pretty cool.
I do have one question for you, JT.
Yeah, go
It
ahead.
occurred to me on the first page when you were talking about how good she was as a motorcyclist. Is she any good at card games, specifically Duel Monsters?
You know, here's a pitch to Konami. A season of Yu-Gi-Oh where they bring in like historical figures to play Duel Monsters with the main cast, and you can have a whole arc where like it's the 5Ds cast playing against Evil Knievel and Bessie Stringfield and my favorite historical figure, Ghost Rider.
I was about to say Johnny
Um,
Blaze.
yeah, but I don't know if she was any good at card games.
Let's
Although I
just
do have
assume she was.
I feel like she's the type who would like play poker on the weekends and be really good at it. But I do have two other facts to add about her that I didn't mention before, if you guys don't have anything else to add. So the first is that she, after the war was over, she spent like the rest of her life, and she died, I want to say like mid 50s of a heart condition. So like not too long of a life post-war, but she spent a lot of time in that period of her life going around and just putting on like motorcycle shows and raising money for racial and gender struggles. She was a huge, not necessarily like a figure in the women's rights movement, but she was a big supporter of it. And this year, 2024, year of our Lord, there is a documentary about Bessie Stringfield being made that will come out. I didn't know that until I was researching for her. In fact, by the time this video goes up, I think it will have been shown for the first time at a film festival. But you might be able to learn more about her life once this video's gone up if this interests you. But that's all I have to say about her.
I would really like Bessie Stringfield. She's awesome.
All right. I think that was our historical figures.
That's all of our historical figures.
That's it. And the great thing about history is that there are still so many people we could talk about.
But you mean there's
that's
more than 6 people in history?
There's more than 6.
That's crazy.
That
Are there
same
at
comment,
least 9?
I would argue that there's at least 9.
All right. Well, in that case, you gotta put comments to tell us to make another one. If you want to see another one. If you don't, complain to JT. Just don't do it to me. I don't want to hear it.
Give us suggestions, or if you really want to see the fantasy one, or a different type of things where we're turning certain characters or things like that into D&D characters, D&D classes.
I really love I love history and I love learning about history. And so for me, like half the fun of this was learning more about Bessie Stringfield, who's a person that I knew about, but I didn't really know her full story. And so if you guys have like more obscure characters that you think would be great for this premise, please drop those. Even if we don't use them, I can guarantee that I will research them and learn about them. I can't guarantee that for the other two, but I will.
I might.
But yeah, I mentioned it earlier, but we have a game that we play at certain times of the week, don't we? Shane, you want to talk about that?
I mean, I can. Are you sure? Do we play one? Oh, wait.
Depends.
Oh, I see. You mean Heartwood Heist, the game that Marshall is DMing.
Yes.
What is that? Every first, third, and fifth Saturday at 7 p.m. Central. I'm saying everything like it's a question, even though I believe that's true. If you want to see the aforementioned Beef, JT's character, my character in that game is Dawn, a druid. It's a lot of fun. You should check it out. We're nearing the
has
end.
Gotten crazier.
We are nearing the end. We got some interesting things coming up.
And, if you don't really want to jump into a campaign that's about to be over, first off, once it's over, you can just binge the whole thing. But
we got a playlist of it.
That's true. Within the next couple of months, we are going to start another campaign that I'm running called, I think this is the first time I'll have name dropped it, but I'll just do it here, called The Mantis Project, that I'm very excited about. It's got a lot of like conspiracy aspects in it. If you're a fan of Full Metal Alchemist, this is probably for you. It's got some of those vibes. So tune into that once we get started. We'll have some promotional for it once it's closer to time. If you liked this video, absolutely check out the other one that we did about historical figures. But you can also check out, I mentioned our thoughts on aquatic races. We have 4 videos breaking down our thoughts on every race in Dungeons and Dragons. Some of them are spicy takes. Some of them I've rewatched since and have already changed my opinion on. But feel free to check those out. I particularly think the 4th one that we did, covering the weirder races like Kender and Plasmoids, is really good. Is there anything else we need to add or plug here at the end?
Go check out other videos that we haven't mentioned. We have a good amount, and we're only going to continue making more.
Just go watch all of our videos, guys. Let's make it simple. Just go through our YouTube, go to our YouTube page, watch every single video we have.
Binge them all.
And please, at least comment on our videos. We love interacting with y'all. Anytime there's a comment that anyone sends a comment, we are almost always talking about it, especially if it's very positive and giving us feedback on things like that. We talk about it for a little while and makes our days. Please let us know.
We also talk about it if you're telling Shane that Minsk was in Baldur's Gate 2.
I have learned my lesson, people. Please forgive me by now.
But I think we've drawn out this ending enough, so we'll see you guys next time. We hope to see you on our Odysseys. But if not, we hope you had a great time. Bye.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a great rest of y'all's time. Bye-bye.